To me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff.
Donald Trump loves tariffs. He loves them so much. The Peterson Institute for International Economics did some research on the effect of all of Trump's potential tariffs. It estimates that prices would rise by 1%. US GDP would be 0.6% lower than it would have been by 2026. And total US employment would be 1% lower. These numbers seem small, but here is what they mean. A 20% across-the-board tariff combined with a 60% tariff on China will cost a typical US household $2,600 a year. Mexico, if it retaliates, will destroy 400,000 American jobs. 25% tariff on imports from Mexico and Canada could add $3,000 on average to the price of cars. General Motors would see its earnings per share cut in half. It's not just bad, it's catastrophic, self-imposed economic torture. So why the heck is he doing this? Well, ask yourself, what does tariff bring in? According to the Tax Foundation's research in June 2024, the tariffs levied by the past two administrations have brought in $79 billion a year in revenue for the federal government. A permanent 25% tariff on all imports from Canada and Mexico, and additional 10% on all imports from China, would generate $1.2 trillion in tax revenue from 2025 through 2034. And a 10% universal tariff would raise $2 trillion over the same period. That is hard cash for the federal government, and it needs it.
U.S. government debt is now the highest in history. It's now more than $34 trillion, and that number keeps climbing.
What has happened is that the huge level of government expenditures, whether it's for welfare programs or for defense or just for government administration, has resulted in larger and larger governments over time. And these larger governments have had to fund themselves, and they've not always raised taxes to balance the budget.
Here comes the tax increase. According to the Tax Foundation study, the $79 billion tariff revenue means a $625 average annual tax increase on U.S. households. It directly increased tax collections by $200 to $300 annually per household. A 10% universal tariff increases taxes on U.S. households by $1,253 on average. A 20% universal tariff increases it by $2,045. It is taxation without legislation. While Americans struggle to afford daily groceries, they're also paying more to the government. And that's what Donald Trump was boasting about.
Trillions and trillions of dollars pouring into the United States Treasury. China paid hundreds of billions of dollars during my term.
Forget for a minute how tariff reshapes trade relations or what the economists are frightened about. This is about injecting cash into the American government quickly and on a massive scale. And Trump isn't the first American president to do it. Abraham Lincoln, William McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt, all of them loved tariffs. And just as the list goes all the way back to the early foundings of America, tariff too has been an integral part of American politics. In its early days, 80 to 100% of the federal revenue came from tariffs. They made up half of the revenue all the way until the early 20th century. Before the 1940s, it was quite common to have weighted average tariff of effectively 20, 30, 40, even 50%. To get nerdy about it, the first substantive legislation passed by the US Congress was the Tariff Act of 1789, and it was the second bill signed by George Washington. You find even Wikipedia saying the protectionist period was the golden age of American industry. That's the same rhetoric Trump uses. Does American industry need some fixing? Yes, it certainly does.
Well, we've seen a 50-year decline in the share of employment in manufacturing. And after 2000, when overall employment in the economy slowed down a lot, and then, of course, the recession, the big recession, this translated into a huge absolute decline in the number of manufacturing employees.
It's wide open.
What I'd like people to know is don't think you're safe. We really thought we were in this small town. All these people have no jobs now.
If history has taught us anything, it's that the tariffs have had nothing to do with stimulating domestic industries. According to data by the Federal Reserve Board, the tariffs that Donald Trump imposed on Chinese imports back in 2018 reduced manufacturing employment by 1.4%. Rising production costs and the retaliatory tariffs more than offset the purported 0.3% gains achieved by shielding domestic producers from international competitors. Protectionism simply doesn't work the way its believers think it does.
Protectionism isn't really good for anyone. It is, in fact, popular sometimes on a short-term basis, but protectionism means that your industries are going to become uncompetitive. They therefore are going to lose the spur to modernize and compete in the wider export world. So protectionism is a very temporary thing which is very, very damaging in the long run.
While people may have been over-associating this tactic with Donald Trump, the Republican Party, or the China-US trade relations, it goes much broader in scale and is much more worrying in effect. This is about both parties in America using similar tactics against all countries, friend or foe. If you remember, in 2018, Trump imposed a 25% tariff on EU steel and 10% tariff on EU aluminum. Joe Biden didn't cancel them. He didn't revoke them. He simply suspended them to negotiate with the European Union. Not only did the United States leave the quota for EU steel and aluminum in place, but also, as the PIE pointed out, the suspension was because of the implicit understanding that China should be the focus for both the United States and the European Union. That's not support of free trade. That's an opportunistic rain check for protectionism. So I'm saying this again. Tariff is an integral part of American politics, and it has been in place for nearly 250 years now. It is a tactic used time and time again to serve America's political and bureaucratic interests, whatever that interest means. There's no need to tell them protectionism is bad for the general economy. They know it. This is not about correcting unfair trade practices, asserting national security, or any other excuses they've come up with. They want cash in their pocket. That's it. And they will take it from anyone they can.